We are basically ready to start. Tell me when you're ready to go. I'll do our shitty intro and then we can start.
Lol.
He's just... You're like, sorry, let me gargle with some gravel and then do the worst audio throat thing ever. Thanks, dude. I might keep that in, depending on how I'm feeling. That might be just the cold open to the episode.
Oh god, that would be great.
So bad. Oh my god. Regardless, fuck it. We're rolling. Welcome back to Science Insanity. We're just going. Welcome back to Science Insanity. Hello. As you can see, Steve is alive. His back is no longer crippled. It only lasted for a couple days. Apparently, for a Christmas gift, God decided to give Steve pain and make him feel like a 95-year-old man. So
I am in fact the chosen one.
He is in fact the chosen one. So he's back. We're good. We're ready to continue. He watched the last video a couple times, so for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, this is the second part of a 3-part series on the clans from Battletech. Episode 1 was the prehistory of the clans, their flight from the inner sphere, how they established themselves, and then talking a little bit about their culture, their history, their military, just a little bit vague basics about that. Pretty much entirely standalone. If you don't want to go watch that, that's fine. Each of the episodes is designed to be its own bite-sized little piece that you can enjoy. This episode is going to be about...
If you're trying to look at the video, don't just look up the clan. It will bring up something completely different.
I have no idea what you're trying to get at there, but thank you. Today's video is the invasion of the inner sphere, the clans returning to their forgotten homeland, their Garden of Eden, their pseudo-religious view of the golden age of humanity, and kicking the living shit out of everyone in front of them while they believe that they're the best and grind everyone's face into the dirt that says otherwise. So, quick syllabus for today. We are going to be discussing briefly the shifting politics in the clans before the invasion, why they chose to invade at that specific time when there have been votes and debates and conflicts about doing it many times before, the initial invasion. We're going to talk about how Clan Wolf is just the biggest dicked clan ever, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the battles, some of their weaknesses, successes, and failures. So let's start off right at the beginning. Why did the clans choose to invade and the political discontent that was happening before it? So, prior to the invasion, the clans were...
Because they could.
Okay, yes and no. We're getting there. They did want to invade because they could and because they were better, but there were reasons that they didn't do it before. Before the invasion, the clans were mostly peaceful. They were going through their golden age. Of course, they were still warring amongst each other. They're basically like angry toddlers. They can never stop screaming at one another. But they were focusing primarily on economic, industrial, and military growth, putting a lot of time and effort into upping their industrial base and inventing new, creative, and fantastical ways to murder each other as grotesquely as possible. The idea of conquering and invading the inner sphere, while always present because it had become their pseudo-religion set out by their kind of worship of Alexander Kerensky, the biggest dicked man in human history. It was never really the guy, yeah, the soup stock guy.
The soup stock guy.
Okay, you have to watch the first episode to get that one, but the entire thing is, this mentality of invading wasn't super prevalent in the clans. A lot of the Crusader clans and the more zealous ones wanted to go back as soon as possible, but it never really became a pressing or present issue because they were basically dealing with themselves. It was more important to sort out their own political turmoil and to deal with their rivalries and hatreds back home than it was to focus on trying to invade the inner sphere, especially because they had been separate for so long by that point and knew literally nothing of the inner sphere. Like, they went dead cold turkey. There was no communication back and forth. And so they really didn't have it as part of a major doctrine or ideal, out of sight, out of mind. Quite literally. How the fuck the entirety of humanity is out of sight, out of mind, I have no idea, but clans are arrogant enough to find a way.
Just built different.
They are, in fact, built different. Modified as well. They're like GMO cucumbers and carrots. They're just more orange.
That soup stock be hidden different, man.
Exactly. The biggest difference, however, was a number of changes that happened relatively early before the actual invasion that really kick-started this off. Firstly, though, was a conflict between what would come to be known as the Crusader and the Warden clans. Now, like I mentioned, the idea of conquering the Inner Sphere was omnipresent for much of the clanner mythos. However, the reality was that the interpretation of quote-unquote invade was very different between the clans. There was two main political ideologies that really burgeoned. One, the Crusaders, which believed that it was their duty to invade the Inner Sphere, burn down everything, and rebuild humanity under the clan's system. That was the most aggressive, most expansionist, and most imperial viewpoint that the clanners had. The Warden viewpoint was slightly different. They believed that the Inner Sphere and the long-off Star League, which they viewed with almost religious reverence, was kind of something to be left alone, that the clans shouldn't invade unless it was to save the Inner Sphere from itself. They shouldn't invade if it means that the clans would suffer the brunt of it, or if it was unnecessary, or if things would simply continue as the status quo, and that they were better off staying deep into space like Kerensky intended. And those are the two big different viewpoints that really emerged during the about 50 years of politicking and backstabbing that the clans went through before deciding to invade. Like I mentioned, this big political divisions that were already present between the clans really kind of coalesced into these two factions, right? The Wardens and the Crusaders. However, this political conflict came to a head 2980, when a vote was put forth by one of the clans to invade the Inner Sphere. However, the vote failed rather decisively, but the battle lines were essentially drawn in what would become known as the political century, as the Crusader clans pushed even harder for an invasion and used every tactic in clanner society to try to sway, bully, or force the opposing Warden clans into agreeing with their stance. While at the same time, the Warden clans held that totally not a god Kerensky wanted to forever stay apart from the Inner Sphere and would use everything from shaming to their pseudo-deific worship of Kerensky to interpreting his words and doctrines in a different way to try to convince the clans to simply stay put as they were and continue their life of isolation. While the vote failed this time, a motion was instead put forth to send a group of warriors into the Inner Sphere to gather information under the guise of mercenaries, and this was half a ploy and half a desperate gamble to hold the Crusader clans back, because the Wardens feared that they would simply give them the finger and just go to invade the Inner Sphere regardless, and assuming that they won a trial of refusal and stopped anyone from, stopping them, there was nothing that could be done. They would just dip off into the void and go invade, and there was nothing the other clans could do because they would be honor-bound to allow them.
In my opinion, that's the way you should have gone about it. That's just me, though.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna get to some honor duels. There's some really, really funny ones that happened before the invasion, right? But we'll get to those. This was proposed to satisfy them, and the argument went along the lines that even if the clans were superior morally and ethically and just, religiously, whatever, right? The clans believed they were better than the rest of humanity. They didn't know the status of the Inner Sphere. For all they knew, the Inner Sphere could be fortified to the fucking nines and just loaded to bear with weapons and battle mechs ready to go, because when the clans left, the succession wars were about to start, and they didn't know whether or not the Inner Sphere had basically bombed itself back into the Stone Age, or whether or not they have been fighting an ongoing and continually building war for the last 400 years, right? So they had no idea the status of the Inner Sphere, and the Wardens argued that it would be suicide to simply charge in expecting to win when they knew nothing about it. So in order to basically placate them, they went, look, we'll send a whole bunch of clan mercenaries, right? They'll fight for every side of all the great houses. They'll fight for pirates. They'll fight for the great houses themselves. They'll fight for Comstar, whatever. They'll learn the ins and outs of Inner Sphere tactics, doctrine, and military development. And then, once we know all of their strengths and weaknesses, then we can invade. And this was generally hoped to take decades or perhaps centuries in order to actually gain enough information for the Crusader clans to make a well thought out strategy and plan to actually invade.
Screw that. Damn the torpedoes. We're going full speed ahead.
I can't fucking see, but I shall walk through this minefield with the assurity that my legs can simply take it.
Exactly.
Oh, that's, yeah, definitely not going to go horribly, horribly wrong. So this compromise...
Never in a million years.
No, yeah, never in a million years. So this compromise was enough to satisfy the Crusader clans and buy time using the very sound and very realistic arguments that were presented. However, this effort was led primarily by Clan Wolf, the descendant clan of the almighty Kerenskis and a staunch supporter of the Warden philosophy. Keep Clan Wolf in mind. Not only are they one of the only clans that doesn't sound really stupid, like Smoke Jaguar or Ghost Bear, which, ooh, those are some names.
We just translating Native American names into this now? That's what it sounds like. I mean,
it's more like edgy DeviantArt OC level of naming, but you know what? It's fine. There are a lot of people that really, really like the names, and you're allowed to like things that are objectively dumb. It's fine. We all like BattleTech, and I think we can all agree it's objectively dumb. Keep an eye on Clan Wolf. They are very important, and they will come back in backstabbing, genius Giga Chad manner later on in the story. Over time, however, the Crusader clans gained primacy. Their strategy of bullying and converting the other clans worked quite well, and the intel that they were getting from the Wolf's Dragoons painted the Inner Sphere as shit-flinging monkeys that they were. So the clans decided to invade with another vote in 3050. And I should briefly point out that mercenary unit that the clans assembled was the Wolf's Dragoons, and we'll go on a little bit of an aside here, because they are really cool, and also were a little strange when they entered the Inner Sphere. Now, there's something I kind of need to explain, right? The tactics and technology of the Inner Sphere were vastly different during the Age of the Succession Wars than it was during the Age of the Star League. However, the clans didn't really have access to that. The Wolf's Dragoons were trained with a mix of current day clan tactics using their mechs, their strategies, and their weapons, but primarily they were trained with the tactics of the Star League, using the general approximation of their tech and weapons and strategy. So when the Wolf's Dragoons entered the Inner Sphere, they very quickly proved to be one of the most successful mercenary companies just ever, and they were kicking ass and taking names everywhere. And it was also very strange and very surprising. Quite a few eyebrows were raised at this random bunch of mercenaries that just happened to appear on the northern Draconis Combine border one day, suddenly being able to use all of the tactics that were generally not used anymore, and educated and proficient in arts of war that were remarkably different from what all of the other Inner Sphere used. It was kind of strange, almost like if they
nothing weird going on.
Nothing weird
whatsoever.
Like I was saying before that little divergent ramble, the clans had another vote, and this time decided to invade in the 3050s. Surprisingly enough, though, this was primarily motivated by fear. The vote was almost unanimous because the clans were busy flipping shit and losing their goddamn minds. And this was because of a few different issues. Firstly, I need you to brace yourself, okay? All the fans, all right? Because we got some more Federated Commonwealth simping, all right? The King faction, the ones that were going to reunite the Star League, the Lyrian Commonwealth and the Federated Sons. Fucking Giga Chads, all right? 3 major events propelled the vote to pass in almost absolute oh my god, this word. Unanimity. Unanimity. That's the word.
Oh god.
There's so many N's and M's in this word. Okay. First, the first event was the information of the Federated Commonwealth's formation itself. The clan viewed this as an attempt to reconstitute the Star League, a view that was only bolstered when the Federated Commonwealth proceeded to kick the shit out of the other 3 successor states and then ate half of the Capellans to finish it off.
I mean, they had it coming.
Yeah, that's fair. The Capellans had it coming. No such thing as a good Capellan. Only good one's a dead one. The second event that basically caused the clans to go into Turbo Ape mode was Comstar being Comstar. As it turns out, they were monitoring everything as they do, and when they noticed the Wolf's Dragoons and their seemingly hyper-advanced yet ancient battle doctrine being a mix of clan warfare and ancient Star League strategy, Comstar went, and began tracing them back over several decades, following a mix of Kerensky's original flight from the Inner Sphere as well as predictions based on like their clandestine information gathering on where these people came from. They had always suspected that Kerensky and the clans had managed to make it out somewhere into space, but were never successful in finding them. And all of the little tidbits put together finally came to bear fruit when, randomly, by absolute fucking accident, a massive Comstar ship warped into orbit above a clan homeworld.
Comcast finally got it right.
Comcast finally got it right. Except not really, because that's the equivalent of punching a literal hornet's nest. It's not gonna go well. Even if you manage to put your fist through it, all you've gotten is even more pain.
Don't worry, nothing bad could ever happen.
Yeah. So they, if I remember correctly, they jumped over the homeworld of Smoke Jaguar? I think? I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm sure everyone in the comments is going to absolutely lampoon me if I got it wrong. But you know what? Confidently incorrect. So, moving on. The third and final event that really kicked the clans into overdrive and convinced the remaining holdouts, except Clan Wolf, to actually invade was, again, the Federated Commonwealth, because they're simply better than everyone else. Now, the FedCom uncovered and began to unravel the data held within several ancient Star League data vaults. So not only were they reforming the Star League in the clan's eyes, but they were beginning to uncover and replicate the technology and weapons of war from the Star League era, beginning to reintroduce a number of advanced technologies, and this, more than anything else, terrified the clans, because one of their biggest advantages was technology and tactics. If it came down to raw numbers, the Inner Sphere would absolutely demolish them, even if they were fighting at a 3-1 or 4-1 kill advantage, because the Inner Sphere was hundreds of times their size and could muster an industrial base vastly, vastly larger than anything the clans could, even at the very height of their power, right?
Basically just Soviet Russia. I mean, you just throw shit at it till it dies.
Well, I mean, the Inner Sphere is more like America and Russia at the same time, because basically enough men to just drown the enemy in bodies, but also enough weapons and vehicles to crush them under the weight alongside. So, you know, kind of terrifying. And the idea that the clans would lose one of the only advantages they had, being technological superiority, was enough to basically sway all of the rest of the holdouts to vote yes for an invasion. However, despite the fact that this resulted in the clans unanimously voting to invade, the only one that didn't was good old Clan Wolf, like I said, and they issued a challenge of refusal. Now, if you watch the first episode, you may remember what it is, but I'll briefly explain it. A challenge of refusal is basically saying, I'm going to fight you, and if I win, whatever you said, whatever you proposed, whatever was agreed upon, is null and void, and you can't do it again for, insert specified amount of time here. And the thing was, because all of the other clans agreed to this, they issued the challenge to fucking everyone. Literally all of the other clans. And the crazy part is, they almost won. They genuinely almost beat back the rest of the entirety of the clans to stop the invasion by themselves. This is absolutely insane. Since firstly, they were outnumbered more than 3-1 from the very moment go, and were fighting at a heavy disadvantage because of the rules of the challenge. Basically, when this kind of official challenge happens, it turns into a batch-all, so that's like super official hoity-toity honor fights, right? Basically, all of the clans got to decide when the fight's happening, where it's happening, and who gets to bring what, right? So they put they put Clan Wolf in the worst terrain with the most exposed positions, and then surrounded them with overwhelming numbers. And even from that position, Clan Wolf still managed to kick the ever-loving shit out of them and almost pull a victory. It was literally only the fact that they were getting whittled down that they ever ended up losing. So, of course, unfortunately, they did lose. and as petty, hilarious retribution, they were forced to take part as one of the 4 main clans leading the spearhead of the invasion. Now, the clans basically used the excuse that, oh, Clan Wolf, you're descended from Kerensky's soup stock. It's your duty to invade the clans first, right? But you're the soup stock of the biggest dicked man in the galaxy, and it's your duty to thrust the invasion forward. But it's so stupid. In reality, the only reason that they forced Clan Wolf to do it was because of spite and petty revenge for having been the only one that resisted, and for putting up such a goddamn heroic effort to try to stop it. So, preparations for invasion began in earnest, and preparations ended in earnest immediately afterwards. Because you see, most of the clans viewed the Inner Sphere as lesser, and thus put very little effort into things of minor importance, such as logistics, rearmament and resupply, industry and transport, and all of those lovely things that you actually need to fight a war. They looked at him and went, it's fine, I'll just walk forward and everything will crumble in front of me. They didn't really consider that it would actually turn into a fight, and thus didn't truly consider a logistics base.
I mean, it's well known that you don't need any logistics to win wars. I mean, just look at all the times that Russia's been able to be successfully invaded. You don't need logistics.
So, like I was saying, most of the clans didn't really do much in the ways of preparation aside from simply gathering their forces and putting all of it together in one giant cluster and getting ready to charge, right? They put them into one giant death ball, pointed in a direction, and said go, and that was the sum total of their preparation for the biggest invasion in human history. However, Clan Wolf truly prepared. They are no fools. They are no pushovers, and whatever they do, they are damn well determined to be the very best at it, and they had a cunning plan to foil the clan invasion, okay? You see, not only did Clan Wolf truly prepare, putting all of their industry and economy into absolute wartime overdrive and producing and stockpiling as many resources as they possibly could, they created a plan to move all of their civilian and industrial resources into the Inner Sphere. Clan Wolf figured that since it took months at the very fastest to get anything from clan space to the even outer periphery of the Inner Sphere, that it would be far better to pack up their factories and move them to the conquered worlds that they were sure to roll over. That way they could have resupply and repair bases just behind the front line. A thought that no other clan had.
Simple solution. You get rid of logistics. Just bring it to you.
The solution to logistics, simply bring the factories with you, comrade. Oh, it's
pretty easy if you ask me.
Yeah, their cunning plan of moving the factory closer to where they need it. Who would have thunk? The other part of their absolutely genius plan was to simply have the biggest dick of all time and be better than all of the other clans at invading the Inner Sphere.
Pretty solid plan as well. So. Combining the two together sounds pretty unstoppable to me.
We will go into greater detail about that actual plan, because that's basically what the plan boils down to, and it was real. It turned out to be a very successful plan, but there's more to it than that, and we'll explain a little bit later, right? Should also mention that the clans spent quite a while beating the shit out of each other after a bidding war to decide who gets to be the spearhead of the invasion. You see, because the clans are mind-numbingly stupid and honor is more important than actually winning their invasion, they had to decide who was going to invade. And instead of, I don't know, picking up all 20 or so clans and just throwing them all at the Inner Sphere at the same time in a wave of overpowered destruction, only 4 clans would invade the Inner Sphere along 4 invasion corridors. And they had to choose who it gets to be. Of course, Clan Wolf was already voted unanimously to be one of the 4 invading clans because of petty spite, so they got to sit all of this out, while the other clans had to fight one another to decide who gets the honor of being one of the final 3. So, what they started out with was basically an auction. Humana, I give 60 battle mechs. Humana, I give like 120. Do I hear 130 battle mechs? That kind of shit, right? And they would basically pledge how many forces they're going to commit to the invasion, and whoever could give the most efficient or most overwhelming bid would win. After that, there were 6 finalists, and then once you got down to 6 finalists, they basically fought 3 1v1s, and the final 3 people who won got to be the 3 other invading clans. And when it finally came out, there was Clan Wolf, obviously, but there was also Jade Falcon, Smoke Jaguar, and Ghost Bear, right? The 3 stupidest freaking names. I hate
names.
Yeah, those are some names. There are some good clan names though as well, like Clan Mongoose. I like that. It's simple. It's nothing flashy. It just is, you know? There's also Clan Hell's Horses, which that's pretty cool. It's a flaming horse running across the ground, which, you know, still kind of a silly name, but it's cooler than Ghost Bear.
I mean, I'm in on Hell's Horses.
Yeah. So this entire thing took a long-ass time to finish, and the clans were, of course, beating each other to death doing it, so they were sacrificing valuable military resources, right? And I think I went a little bit out of order here, because in my notes it just says, the clans are stupid. They just are. There's not a single brain cell shared between them. Why didn't they all invade at once across the entirety of the Inner Sphere? No idea. Smart tactics and figuring out how to solve a Rubik's Cube are beyond them. So, past Canadian writing this at like 1 a.m. was clearly
God.
Anyways.
Hey man, that Rubik's Cube is as hard as actually smart tactics, you know?
Yeah, you know, just in case of emergency, break glass, and instead of like showing a little hammer or something, it's just a clanner smashing their forehead into it until it breaks. Copious amounts of forehead must be applied to break glass. Anyways, when the actual invasion happened, the clans focused on the Rasselhog Republic. Now, this is not one of the main Inner Sphere great houses. What basically happened was, after the Federated Commonwealth kicked the rest of the Inner Sphere in the nuts, the Draconis Combine sacrificed a small amount of their territory and created a rump state known as the Rasselhog Republic that was independent, on the condition from the Draconis Combine that it would act as a buffer state between them and the Federated Commonwealth. Because unfortunately for the Draconis Combine, the Lyrians were on one flank and the Federated Sons on the other. There was no way they were going to be able to win a two-front war. The Capellans the Capellans tried and failed to fight back, and the Free Worlds League had quite a bit of buffer room because it wasn't, super focused on by the Fed Sons, right? Or the Federated Commonwealth. So the Rasselhog Republic was a new buffer state, and it was very militarily weak. It was relatively unstable, it was relatively weak, and wasn't really prepared to deal with a major invasion from a great house, much less the clans. And the clans, being assholes, believing themselves superior, decided to pick the weakest faction to invade and slammed the majority of their invasion directly into the northern border of poor old Rasselhog. They annihilated them. It was a slaughter. It wasn't even a fight.
Can you spell Rasselhog for me? Because
okay, hang on. We have to consult the interwebs because I spelled it Rasselhug.
Because I'm just envisioning some hogs wrestling.
All right, the Rasselhog Republic, Rassalhague, Rasselhog.
Okay, so I'm just envisioning something completely different than how it's spelled. Okay.
In my script, I'm like 90% sure I spell every single name wrong, but I just don't care.
I mean, we did just hear what your notes said about the clans. Not a single brain cell shared between them. So.
Indeed, yeah, right? So, when the invasion actually came, it was a catastrophic blow with absolute and total surprise and devastating speed. The clans overwhelmed dozens of worlds basically immediately and moved on to dozens more just as fast. The main invasion corridor pushed so far into the Inner Sphere in the first wave of assaults that most of the Inner Sphere dismissed the news of the clans as either propaganda or some insane attempt by one of the major factions to destabilize the other, because nobody could believe that any force, especially not something coming from the periphery, which everyone believed was basically just farmers, hicks, and pirates, to be able to cause that kind of damage that fast.
Surely it's all just propaganda.
Yeah, surely
No
it's all
way
just
it could be
propaganda.
true.
And the major reason about that, right, is that the technology and the tactics of the clans was utterly overwhelming. For example, the Inner Sphere generally used brawling and line-style tactics, right? Battle mechs would use advantageous terrain and slug it out with each other while trying to minimize damage. They generally didn't do super fast head-on charges. They didn't do ridiculous last-minute flanking maneuvers. They didn't have any of that kind of tactics because they didn't have the technology to make it work. And they also didn't engage from absolutely stupid range because they just didn't have the technology to make their weapons effective at that kind of range. When the clans invaded...
Engage from that range.
Yeah, not only could they engage from absolutely stupid ranges that the Inner Sphere couldn't fight back, but their mechs were bigger, faster, stealthier, more versatile, and the clans also had the elementals. Their infantry was basically power armor wearing super soldiers that could take a mech apart if they got close. So what would end up happening is the Inner Sphere would see the clans approaching, take defensive positions, assuming a relatively similar style of warfare, only for the elementals to swarm in ahead of the mechs, basically completely confuse, overwhelm, or outright destroy Inner Sphere mechs and, armored units, and then the clan mechs behind them, the big heavies and mediums and assault mechs, would be absolutely slaughtering them from long range. Precision PPC fire, railgun fire, the Gauss rifles at super long ranges, or even extended range lasers that would be picking components and pieces of the Inner Sphere apart was just overwhelming. Many Inner Sphere garrisons would simply be obliterated before they even saw the clans, much less got into engagement distance. Yet others still were simply run down with their comms, like the communications channels being filled with nothing but panicked screaming and questions about what the hell was going on, because they had no concept of the tactics that the clans were using. Hell, some of the clans, they would use their more advanced dropships, and the fact that their mechs had jump jets to just drop their mechs from like a few kilometers up in the air directly on top of the Inner Sphere, and they would be firing their weapons the whole way down with orbital support, right? Like, the overwhelming speed and power of the clans basically rendered any potential resistance completely moot. Like, the Inner Sphere it didn't have the time, it didn't have the range, it didn't even have the understanding of what was happening to be able to form a coherent resistance, right? If you're dead before you even know what's attacking you, you have no chance to fight back.
There is no wait until you see the whites of their eyes.
Yeah. The other thing to remember, right, is when Kerensky fucked off and took his ball into the depths of space, he also took the vast majority of all of the warships with him, and the clans still had that stuff kicking around. So whenever the clans jumped into system, they would almost instantly use their warships and their sci-fi space fleet to annihilate any jump ships, any minor patrol craft, or like space fighters. They would destroy any communications relays, any space stations, and just annihilate everything in orbit, immediately taking control of the space around any world they were fighting. And from there, they could rain down orbital bombardment almost completely uncontested if they so desired, right? They usually didn't, because the clans believed in an honorable fight, so, being stupid, you could just bomb the enemy into oblivion, but why bother doing that when you can fight them mano a mano from across the continent?
Never even set foot on the ground and kill them all. But
yeah, I was gonna say,
smart.
Yeah, I was gonna say like honorable combat, but how honorable is it really when you're sniping someone from half a continent away and they can't even see you? But it is what it is. The clans be the clans. They're nothing if not hypocritical. So the early invasion was absolute chaos, right? Like nobody could stop the clans. They were making thunderous progress through the Inner Sphere. And after smashing their way so deep into the Inner Sphere that they were halfway to Earth, they made it halfway to Terra, Clan Wolf sprung its genius plans to destabilize the clan invasion. All right, you ready for this? You ready? You ready for the full plan that Clan Wolf had, right?
Yes.
So, like we discussed, they actually had logistics, and they fought to win more than they fought for honor. They used any strategy and tactics they so could to give themselves an advantage, and they were absolutely not ashamed of simply going around an enemy rather than fighting them if it meant that they could take control of all the, important strategic areas and force a surrender. Why even bother?
Very honorable to me. I mean...
So, not only did they actually have logistics, and they were fighting more to win than they were for honor or glory or just, whatever bullshittery the clans had, but their plan was to use their new logistics base in the Inner Sphere and the moving of much of their industry into the conquered territory to make more progress towards Terra and invade the Inner Sphere more efficiently than any of the other clans. Their plan relied on abusing all of the culture and customs of the clans to basically trick them into overextending and performing badly, by basically outperforming all of the other clans to a hilarious degree. Like, a wonderful example is Clan Wolf conquers 16 worlds in a given assault. The next best was Clan Ghost Bear, who only got 8. They were outperforming the rest of the mainline invaders by leaps and bounds, like 2-to-1 level of conquest, right? They were humiliating the other clans, and they were doing it faster. Because their logistics were so close to the front lines, they were capable of repairing, rearming, and heading back out with a way shorter turnaround time than the rest of the clans did. So, what this did was basically force the other clans, because of their honor and pride, to throw themselves even harder at the Inner Sphere. And this may sound like it's actually helping the clans, spurring them to move forward. But the reality was that it left them strung out and weakened. They were overcommitting forces to conflicts and actions that didn't need them, or they were stringing themselves far thinner along the front line than they should have in order to make up the same types of stunning conquests that Clan Wolf was accomplishing, right? Which ended up coming back to bite them in the ass. Another thing that happened...
What's that saying? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it or something like that?
Yeah, it's an old quote. It couldn't possibly have bearing on the future. Who needs to remember stuff like that, right? Who could possibly need that? Another aspect of Clan Wolf's plan was that they essentially goaded the other clans by offering almost an olive branch, but the way that the other clans took it was like an insult. You see, by this point, the Inner Sphere was well aware of what was going on and had essentially rallied together to put all of their resources across the Inner Sphere into the front line to fight back the clans. They put aside their differences because they all agreed they're not going to stop at Terra, they're not going to stop at the Draconis Combine or the Federated Commonwealth, they're taking everything. So even the Capellans, who had their legs ripped off by the Federated Commonwealth, even they were contributing men and mechs, material, technological support, all of that. All hands on deck. The Inner Sphere united against a common enemy.
So how did the Capellans fuck it up, though? Because I know that's coming somewhere.
Surprisingly, they didn't, actually. For once in their... Although, mostly, I think it's because the Capellans didn't really have the capacity to do anything. If the other 4 great houses were like 4 dudes in a no-holds-bar, life-or-death brawl behind a bar or something, the Capellan Confederation is a dude with no legs throwing pebbles from the side, right? Like they're not really contributing much, okay? They're not really like a main player in this fight.
He thinks he's part of the team, mean?
I'm part of the team too, guys. God, the Capellan fans probably fucking hate me. I apologize to them for treating their faction like garbage and then proceed to immediately keep doing it in all the rest of the video. Oh, it's fine. Nobody cares about that.
They won't notice. It's fine.
Yeah, they won't notice. It'll just blend into the background with everything else everyone says about the Capellans. So what Clan Wolf did, right, is as the Inner Sphere started to respond and started to adapt, Clan Wolf paid very close attention to how the Inner Sphere was learning from their tactics and what was effective against them. Many mercenary groups that had access to some big, bulky, advanced weapons or mercenary groups that were extremely skilled because of their decades of constant warfare ended up proving to be a genuine challenge. Many of these mercenaries, even though they were completely outmatched and still got slaughtered, ended up bloodying Clan Wolf relatively badly in many battles. They didn't inflict serious damage, but they slowed them down and forced them to basically halt entire army groups to repair and rearm because they inflicted so much damage while dying heroically. And Clan Wolf learned from this. And what they did was they went to the other clans and basically went, hey guys, we see that you're struggling a little bit. Would you like all of this combat information that we've compiled? It might help you guys against the mercenaries in the Inner Sphere, you know? And the other clans did not react well to this at all.
Doesn't seem like something they would be very okay with.
Yeah, a lot of them took it as an insult to their honor or a strike against their pride, and many slapped the offer away, either, you know, relatively peaceably, but very noticeably they were angry about it, or they slapped it away with insults and shouting, right? They were not particularly happy. You gotta remember, the perspective of this is really surprising and really funny. Clan Wolf was basically a pacifist. They were fighting as hard as possible to avoid this invasion, right? They were doing their damnedest to hold back the entirety of the clans. And finally, the clans think that they get one over on Clan Wolf by forcing them to invade, forcing them to be the tip of the spear, you know, Kerensky's soup stock and all that. And what does Clan Wolf do? They literally just
go out and do it better.
Yeah, they fucking whip it out, throw it on the table, go, let's fucking go then. First one to Terra wins, we're gonna be the first one to Terra. And they just went, right? So it's like, all the spite and petty revenge that the other clan leaders had just came back to kick them in the nuts. And it was just made all the sweeter by the fact that Clan Wolf was like reaching a hand back, being like, hey guys, you need a hand over the finish line, right? Absolutely great. It was hilarious. The reason that this was working so effectively is because before the invasion, the clans needed a clear goal. One of them had to stand supreme. The Star League had to have a leader. It had to have a first lord, right? And so what they decided, that is, whichever clan first makes it to Terra is the one that gets to become the new first lord, or the new, as they called it, ill clan, right? Like the supreme clan in perpetuity, forever. Whichever clan conquers Terra gets to rule the new Star League and everything under it. And Clan Wolf was beating all of the other clans' ass towards the target. They were not happy about this. As the fourth wave of assaults and advances began, only Clan Wolf had any real success. In fact, they were still kicking ass and outperforming all the other 3 invasion clans put together. Ghost Bear only got 8 worlds, like I said, to Clan Wolf's 16, and Jade Falcon and Smoke Jaguar were actually fought to a stalemate on several fronts, and even beaten back, losing some worlds to Federated Commonwealth counterattacks. If I remember correctly, I think Jade Falcon lost one of their most highly prided units to a Federated Commonwealth counterattack, and even though they inflicted horrific losses on the Inner Sphere forces, the Inner Sphere conquered the planet and slaughtered the clans to a man. It was one of the first real, counterattacks that succeeded by the Inner Sphere, and it was coming at the cost of the other clans, which, again, only further emasculated them.
Kind of deserve it with a name like Jaded Falcon, I mean.
Yeah, fair enough, right? It's pretentious and stupid. The most significant event, however, was the death of the clan's Ill Khan. Now, I need to explain a few things, right? When the clans invaded, they had to elect something called an Ill Khan. The Khan is the leader of a clan, and an Ill Khan is the leader of all the clans in a given environment. He was the leader of everything for the invasion, the head, or the general of the invasion, right? The only person with the authority to give orders to all of the other clans. And he died in the best way possible, okay? And his giant flagship, the Dire Wolf, jumped into a system to meet with several other clan leaders. After the clans showed up and stuff, and they jumped into this system to begin their negotiations and their battle talks and whatever, right? they found that they were not alone. A fleet of ragtag Rosselhog vessels were in system that had jumped to a world behind clan lines in an attempt to flee another clan invasion, not knowing that this world was already conquered. So suddenly, a whole bunch of Rosselhog vessels randomly appeared in front of the clan's most important flagship, and they were approaching the clan fleet. Oh boy. Again, the clans just obliterated them. Like, the Inner Sphere doesn't really have any comparable space vessels, but the Rosselhog vessels decided that they were going to sacrifice themselves to save the nobility that was aboard the flagship, like the king or whatever of Rosselhog, right? Like the head of state, basically. And they decided they were going to sacrifice themselves to delay the clans and let this guy get away. However, in an act of absolutely suicidal valor by the woman with just steel cojones almost as big as Kerensky's, a pilot named Tyra Miraborg decided to give the Ilkhan a handshake and a headbutt, with the added presence of her entire ship as a parting gift. She rammed it into the bridge of the clan warship and killed the Ilkhan in the pursuing explosion, literally beheading the clan's invasion in a single moment.
True HMS Glowworm moment.
Like, just... Firstly, how the fuck did she get that close? What the hell were the clans doing?
They simply weren't paying attention.
No, man, like, the single brain cell that they share, right? They saw this ship coming, and the Ilkhan was like, "Ah, an honorable challenger! Drive me closer! I wish to hit her with my sword!" Right? Like...
I wish to hit them with my ship.
We shall engage in honorable starfaring melee. And he just rams them, like... What a fucking... Like, I don't understand how it happened. There's no universe where something like that should happen, but you know what? Whatever. The clans are stupid. They got absolutely smashed.
There's not, but then you look at incidents that it already happened in real life. I mean...
Yeah, that's true. It's happened many times in real lives where ships ram each other, so...
Just look at kamikazes.
Yeah, but I mean... You generally don't have something like, you know... the USS Johnston ramming the Yamato and, you know, blowing up the Yamato, or like killing the Emperor of Japan while doing it. Like, it's not really something that happens, right? It's kind of ridiculous. Because she killed the Ilkhan, the clans had to basically pause the invasion. None of them could agree on anything, and several of the clans that were participating would sooner shoot each other in the back than shoot the enemy in the front. So they couldn't elect a new leader on the front because of their stupid honor traditions and their cultural heritage garbage, and instead of promoting a leader on the front temporarily while the political machinations happened back in clan space, all of the clan leaders had to pause the invasion and take all of their, like, true-blooded named warriors or whatever back to clan space to do another one of these big bidding trial war game bullshittery things to elect another leader. And they basically... Oh, it gets better, right? It gets better. You'd think, oh, it took them like a few weeks or like a couple months. No, it took them over a year to do this. They just pressed pause on the invasion for over a year. Like,
well, I mean, to be fair, you said it's about like a 5-month trip back there, so I mean,
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Just so this delay gave the Inner Sphere almost a year to rebuild, rearm, prepare for the inevitable clan return, and also start punching the shit out of Comstar and making damn sure that they use NordVPN sponsor. No, okay. There's no universe where I get a NordVPN sponsor. It's just not happening.
Make sure they use Raid
Shadow Legends. NordVPN. Use the clan Raid Shadow Legends to get 20% off of your landed titles or whatever the fuck that thing is. Become a lord or lady here, and make sure that you use that new title to get Raycons.
Listen to your new Audible subscription.
The sponsorship just keeps going. It just keeps getting bigger. Oh my god, yeah. So the reason a lot of the Inner Sphere was starting to get real suspicious of Comstar is because, strangely enough, a lot of their supposedly secret military movements and a lot of their supposedly hidden or well-protected, like, information warfare operations were being revealed to the clans, almost like the clans knew when and how and where Inner Sphere units would move or travel across the stars, which, you know, once or twice could be an accident, maybe, that you are getting invaded across a massive front of space, but happening so consistently, something was a little fishy. Something was going on that wasn't quite right. Stank a little bit of Comcast interference.
No, man, system clans be built different. They got them telepathic abilities, and they just know.
No, the soup stock isn't telepathic. Unfortunately, Comstar was just being dickishly asshole-ish again. Comstar was founded by the few remaining Star League members that stayed behind, that were, you know, left behind by Kerensky and didn't go through the Great Exodus. And they eventually formed Comstar with a similar goal to the clans of rebuilding the Star League. And when the clans invaded, Comstar saw this as a wonderful opportunity. They could help the clans. They saw each other, in fact, as a golden ticket. Comstar could feed them information and create massive communications blackouts for the clans to assist in their invasion, and the clans could serve as the muscle to help Comstar retake the Inner Sphere. Because while Comstar maintained massive stockpiles and armaments as well as information from the Star League eras, Comstar being pretty much the only faction in the Inner Sphere that could still build and utilize, in very small numbers, all of the lost tech, but they just didn't have the numbers, right? They didn't have the numbers to conquer the Inner Sphere. And so they decided to work with the clans. And what Comstar did was they would basically, after, you know, some diplomacy with the clans to kind of feel each other out, Comstar decided to create information blackouts. They would basically entirely black out star systems that were getting invaded, and nobody could tell what was happening until after the clans left them and started invading another world. That also contributed to why the clans made such rapid progress and why people thought it was pure propaganda about what was going on, because Comstar was blacking out, censoring, or outright creating false news and propaganda to slow down the response of the Inner Sphere and allow the clans as much time as possible to get further in and invade even more.
So what you're saying is, it was in fact propaganda.
It was... Yes, the clan invasion was in fact propaganda.
Wait, it's a propaganda war? Always
Indeed,
has been.
I guess always has been. So this delay, however, of 1 year gave the Inner Sphere a lot of time to reconstitute its forces, and they started hiding what they were doing from Comstar, intentionally using less effective means of communication and kind of obscuring all of their movements because they suspected that Comstar was assisting the clans. The excuse that Comstar gave when asked is that they're not working with the clans, which was a flat-faced lie, but they were trying to help the people on the conquered worlds, to administrate, to kind of, give humanitarian aid and that kind of stuff. Again, a bold-faced lie, but it's what they went with. After that 1 year, the clans did indeed return. However, this time it would be a fight, not a slaughter. Having salvaged clan technology and succeeded in unlocking many of those Star League data vaults, the Inner Sphere, for the first time since the Star League, were working in near perfect unison, sharing technology, industrial, economic, and even military resources with one another, and rapidly rebuilding and reconstituting their forces. The Federated Suns and the Free Worlds League became arsenals of the Inner Sphere, stripping every garrison, every base, every weapon and man that they could, and sending them to the front lines and borders and reinforcing the Lyrian Commonwealth, the Rosselhog Republic, and the Draconis Combine. Now, all the while, the Federated Commonwealth and Draconis Combine set about making effective counter-strategies and fortifications to try to stop the impending clan return. If they couldn't get into combat on an open field, then they would use strategy, deception, and fortifications to help level the playing field and outmaneuver the clans using their own strategies against them. Now, at this point, it was going to be a fight, a real slugging match for the fate of the Inner Sphere. The some industrial might of the Inner Sphere was working overdrive in that year to prepare for the clan's return. It was a monumental effort, but it wasn't quite enough. When the clan's fifth wave of assaults came, it smashed through much of the Inner Sphere's defenses. However, this time, it was notably lethargic. Unlike the prior invasions, this time the clans would fight, die, and bleed for every world that they took. No easy victories, and often suffering severe setbacks and losses at the hands of the revitalized great houses. The Inner Sphere may have been losing, but they were losing slowly, and every day that went by, they traded a little more favorably with the clans. When the clans tried to invade the Draconis Combine's capital world of Luthien, which was also their most prosperous industrial world, the Draconis Combine asked the Federated Sons for aid and gave them absolute access to their space, which would have been unthinkable before the clan invasion. And they got it without question or complaint. Many mercenary units and nearly the entirety of the remaining Fed Sons border units were sent to aid the Draconis Combine, and together they crushed the clan assault and pushed them back at great cost on both sides back towards their invasion corridor. Eventually, it became clear that even with reinforcements from 2 more clans, the invasion was starting to stall. Only Clan Wolf, Biggest Dickus Maximus, still managing to make fast and decisive progress, descended from the man himself Kerensky, and actually managed to keep the invasion going, moving towards Terra. Part of the reason for the poor performance was initial politicking. The 2 reinforcement clans bickered back and forth with those that they were reinforcing, often, engaging in accidental friendly fire with their own clan allies. This gave the Federated Commonwealth all the time it needed to continue to reinforce and stall the clan's reinvigorated assault. However, the final blow to the clan invasion came when they revealed their true plans to Comstar. Up until this point, Comstar had been insisting the clans, blocking communications on targeted worlds, handing off vital military information, and even suggesting targets where the great houses were weak. Comstar was assisting so much that even the houses began to distrust them and notice what they were doing. That's how blatant they were actually being with their support. Both Comstar and the clans had the goals of reunifying, of course, but both of them wanted to be the top dog. Remember, Comstar wants Earth. They were willing to risk pissing off every single one of the great houses by taking control of it initially, and they would be damned if the clans would take it from them. Despite the respect the clans showed them for being a preserved remnant of the Star League, Comstar had no such reservations or thoughts to impede them about taking action against the clans. So what Comstar did, they gave a batch-all to all of the clans. So a batch-all, like I mentioned, is a sacred clan battle challenge, and it was against all of them, offering to fight them on the world of Tukiyed. If the clans won, Comstar would submit, handing over Terra and working to support their invasion in perpetuity. They lied. There is no way in hell Comstar would ever agree to something like that, even if they lost. They would just find a way to continue fighting regardless, because they're backstabbing trash holes like that. And if Comstar won, the clans would pause their invasion for 15 years and not advance any farther towards Earth. The clan that performed best in the challenge would become the new ruler of the Star League, basically winning their race to Terra by default. With the rules set, Comstar's plan was in action. Even if they lost, Comstar had no intention of following through, and in a worst-case scenario, they still would have ground down the clans and brought precious time for the great houses to rearm and come back for round 3. The battle for Tukiyed, however, is for another day, but we'll end off by saying Comstar had the mother of all plans, the greatest general the Inner Sphere could muster, balls to match the size of Alexander Kerensky, and they were damn determined that they were going to win or die to the last man trying. And Comstar didn't challenge the clans one at a time or a specific group. Comstar threw down the gauntlet, challenged every single one of them at once to come assault the same world, and screamed that the invading eugenicists would have to drag them off Tukiyed bloodied and broken if they wanted any form of victory. And the clans? They agreed in full. Finally, someone was fighting back in a language they could understand. That's where I think we're going to end off the video. Anything to say before we call it quits?
Good to be back. Hope y'all didn't get too annoyed with just Canadian talking the entire time.
Oh no, it was
in
great.
the last video.
They loved it. It was fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Certainly they enjoyed it. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. Ignore the fact it's the lowest view count video so far. It's fine. We got the magic back though.
Totally has nothing to do with it.
Totally,
nothing
yeah,
at all.
of course. So with that being concluded, that is episode 2 of the clans. Episode 3 is going to be the Battle of Tukiad in full, and then talking about the aftermath of it and what happened a little bit going forward. So hope you'll stick around for that. And if you haven't, check out episode 1. It explains where the clans came from, and it explains a little bit about their culture and history. You might enjoy that and find it useful.
And if you really like that, go see the first 2 videos that we did as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. The lore primer and battle mechs. Battle mechs turning out to be one of the most popular videos so far. Very popular, more popular than most of my videos on the main channel. So it's not emasculating about my effort at all. But yeah, that's it. We're done. Speaking of main channel, this is Science and Sanity. I am the Raging Canadian. My main channel is also the Raging Canadian. I do video game stuff. You want to see sci-fi things like Battletech or Darktide or maybe Battlestar Galactica and some Armored Core 6 when it comes out, head on over to there. I do other stuff as well, and I stream semi-regularly. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have had a wonderful day, and I think that's it. Goodbye.